Forgotten by skyscraper headlines yet pivotal to the Trump family saga, Frederick Christ Fred Trump Jr., 1938 to 1981, lived a life that soared from TWA cockpits to the shadowed attic of the Queen's Mansion, where winning was the only acceptable language. While his younger brother Donald Trump built a real estate empire and later occupied the White House, Fred Jr., once a charismatic airline pilot and heir apparent, spiraled into alcoholism after clashing with the brutal expectations of their tyrannical father, Fred Trump Sr. This cinematic deep dive retraces Fred Jr.'s meteoric highs, heartbreaking lows, and the family rifts that still echo in lawsuits, memoirs, and modern politics. Discover how a botched steeplechase park deal, a marriage condemned by the patriarch, and a revoked pilot's license pushed the Trump who flew away toward an early death at 42, and how his story helped shape the Trump brand's merciless ethos, revealed in Marielle Trump's bestseller Too Much and Never Enough. Buckle up for an intimate journey of ambition, addiction, and the cost of dreaming sky high in a family grounded in ruthless real estate. You can almost smell the creosote drifting off the telephone poles when the camera swoops in on Jamaica Estates in the autumn of 1949. An opulent little island of red brick Tudors and clipped hedges floating in a sea of working-class queens. 11-year-old Frederick Christ Trump Jr. is sprinting down the neat driveway of 8514 Midland Parkway, baseball cleats clacking on flagstones, glove tucked under one arm, hair blonde enough to catch afternoon light like a halo. He shouts to his kid brother trailing behind, "Hurry, Don, we're already late for warm-ups." And in that frozen frame, you can glimpse the alternate timeline nobody ever got, the one where big brothers pull little brothers upward instead of sideways, the one where family isn't a competition disguised as Thanksgiving. But zip the film reel back a decade, because understanding Freddie, really understanding him, means pressing your ear to the family phonograph at the exact moment Benny Goodman's clarinet drifts through the parlor and Fred Sr.'s voice cuts in, gravelly with ambition. The patriarch wants the volume lower. He's running numbers in his head, construction costs of 72 new row houses out in Coney Island, and clarinets mess with concentration. Mary Ann, the Scottish import who traded Hebrides fog for New York money, is peeling potatoes in the kitchen, humming a Gaelic lullaby none of her children understand. Mary Ann, the eldest, is bent over Latin homework. Donald, only 3, is building a skyline out of sugar cubes and knocking it down for fun. In the middle of it all sits Freddie, a second-born, who already knows second place is nowhere in a house where everyone is expected to win every moment. He tries to meet his father's gaze at dinner and is rewarded with a half-smile that feels leased, not owned. Fred Sr. doesn't speak the language of playful affection. His compliments come encrypted in critique. Don't slouch, don't mumble, confidence sells condos. So Freddie perfects an upright posture and an easy laugh, but he cannot scrub the softness from his eyes, the way they linger on a sparrow outside the window or on his mother's hands when she ices a birthday cake. The softness will cost him later, but he guards it with boyish stubbornness, the way a pocket full of marbles might jangle defiantly in pressed slacks. By 14, he is a natural charmer, able to quote Casey Stengel box scores 1 minute and Chaucer the next, able to flick a beer cap across a dorm room ceiling and land it in a wastebasket like magic. At St. Paul's School on Long Island, roommates swear he can talk an RA into ignoring curfew or a Latin tutor into postponing tomorrow's quiz. What none of them see is how hard he studies elevator diagrams and wiring schematics after lights out, hunger to prove his utility to the father who measures affection in square footage. He wins admission to Lehigh University in 1956 and spends freshman orientation half hypnotized by the roar of small planes slicing the Bethlehem sky. One Friday night, he bikes to a municipal airfield where a flight instructor named Gus lets him pick the yoke of a Piper Cub during taxi just to watch the spark in the kid's face. Freddie's palms tingle at the instrument panel's hum. For the next 3 years, he spends more time at that airstrip than in frat house basements. He logs hours under sun-washed cumulus clouds, learning that altitude reorganizes the map of worry. Queens becomes a toy village. Father becomes ant-sized. The airfield's cold seat metal feels more forgiving than his own dinner table. Graduation arrives with pomp and a handshake from engineering faculty, proud to see an upperclassman who actually built a working scale model of an elevator brake. Freddie steps off campus with diploma in hand and a TWA application already half complete. He calls home to announce that he's accepted an offer to train on the brand new Boeing 707s. The transatlantic jet age is dawning. Idle boys become stewards. Bold men become captains. His father pauses, a pause so long static crackles, then asks, "Son, how does flying people around help build equity?" Freddie's heart drops a deck inside his chest, but he replies, "It helps me build me." In the background, he hears Donald snicker into the receiver, and the line disconnects not with a click, but with an aftertaste. Training is part boot camp, part finishing school. Meteorology, hydraulics, emergency procedures, posture lessons, so every steward sees a uniform creed of confidence. Freddie masters crosswind takeoffs, engine-out simulations, cockpit checklists recited so fast they resemble jazz. There's a photograph from 1962, 4 young pilots lounging on the wheel, well of a 707, thumbs hooked in epaulets, Manhattan skyline blurring in the distance. Freddie's grin is the grin of a man who found a portal out of gravity's drag. Turbulence hits in the form of a stewardess named Linda Clapp. They meet on a Rome layover at a trattoria where Chianti is cheaper than Coke. She laughs at his attempt to order in phrasebook Italian. He teases her about the TWA wings pinned crooked on her blouse. And by midnight they are strolling past the Pantheon, asking each other secret questions. Script favorite Beatles song. Best place to hide a love letter. Worst childhood fear. Back in New York, they court on municipal golf courses and watch Sunday matinees in Midtown, devouring popcorn and possibility. Linda's warmth incarnate, the antithesis of Trump freeze. Freddie visits her Long Island family and feels, for once, no scoreboard ticker above conversation. But Trump marriages are mergers, not romances, and Fred Sr. audits his second son's engagement like an unfavorable quarterly report. A flight attendant, really? No pedigree, no dowry, no network of lenders? The patriarch tries to postpone the wedding date until after Donald's Sweet 16 bash, but the couple weds anyway in a modest church ceremony in 1962. Half the pews reserved for Trumps sit empty. In the official photographs, Donald and Robert are off to the side, whisper laughing. Marianne looks resigned. Fred Sr. appears in only one shot, jaw clenched like he's trimming budget overruns. On their honeymoon, Freddie tells Linda about the dream of captaining an inaugural 707 to Paris. She tells him about wanting 3 kids and a garden big enough for peonies. They settle in a 2-bedroom starter in Jamaica Estates, close enough to the old house for Sunday dinner, but just far enough for oxygen. Freddie paints the nursery sky blue even before they conceive. Linda tapes flight postcards to the fridge. Madrid, Honolulu, Dusseldorf. TWA becomes both paycheck and passport to a life that feels unscripted. Their firstborn, Frederick III, arrives with a shock of hair and a neurological condition that doctors can't quite classify. Eventually, they call it cerebral palsy. Freddie flinches when he reads the file. He stays up nights rocking the baby, whispering altitude analogies about how jets correct drift. He hears the paternal voice on his shoulder. Weakness is unacceptable. Freddie refuses to categorize his son as anything but unstoppable. He doodles small airplanes on the kid's wall and spins improbable bedtime yarns in which Fred III becomes LaGuardia's youngest air traffic controller. 2 years later, Mary comes along, a squealer with a laugh like wind chimes. Linda catches Freddie singing to both kids in a Scottish lilt he picked up from Marianne, and for a fleeting season, life paints a postcard of its own. But the cockpit air is drying his throat. TWA's party culture is aviation's open secret. Layovers lubricated by unlimited airline vouchers. Captains who treat hotel bars like second briefing rooms. Freddie drinks to keep pace, at first 2 gin and tonics to steady nerves, then 4 whiskeys to help sleep, then 8 scotches, because what's the difference? Alcohol is an elevator going down. It always opens its doors. Colleagues overlook the early stumbles because he's a trump and a Golden Glove pilot. In 1966, management grounds him for 2 months after he shows up to pre-flight with a tremor. Freddie pleads for a retest, passes, returns to the skies, promising Linda it will never happen again. They celebrate with sparkling cider, which he spikes when she leaves the kitchen. Every orbit has decay. On a crisp December morning in 1968, he misses a mandatory physical because he oversleeps in a Chicago hotel. Alarm clock still humming. When he rushes to O'Hare, breath sour, the medical examiner asks him to blow into a new piece of police equipment called a breathalyzer. The printout dooms him. License revoked pending investigation. TWA quietly moves him to ground operations, but word reaches Fred Sr. in Queens. The patriarch dispatches a telegram with the subtlety of a wrecking ball. Come home. Real work awaits. Freddie packs his wings and the black box of shame. Trump management is a fluorescent labyrinth of rental ledgers, eviction notices, and the sound of staplers punching tenancies into legal fiber. Freddie is handed Steeplechase Park, the crown jewel of Coney Island's fading amusement row, recently purchased dirt cheap so the family can bulldoze it into luxury apartments. His job isn't to save the park, it's to keep the books balanced until the wrecking ball swings. But Freddie sees potential. Repaint the roller coaster, revive the bandshell, lure families back. He launches Discount Days, children under 5 for a nickel. Turnstile traffic ticks up, but maintenance costs outstrip nickel tickets. And in less than a year, the project bleeds red. Donald, fresh out of Wharton, tours the site in silk tie and macaroni slick hair, pronounces the place a dump, and reports to Dad that the numbers stink. In a boardroom ambush, they strip Freddie of authority and close the park's gates for good. That evening, Donald jokes to a reporter that his brother wasn't really a killer. In Trump dialect, that's a death sentence. Linda watches the humiliation metastasize. Freddie holes up in the attic of the Midland Parkway mansion, the same attic where he played pirate games as a kid. He piles empty Seagram's bottles near the radiator and switches from cigarettes to cigars because they burn slower. Mary, now 5, asks why the daddy smells funny. Linda tries interventions, family counseling, priest visits, old flight buddies. Fred Sr.'s version of intervention is snatching the grandkids for a Sunday outing to show them what ambition looks like. Half-finished high-rise skeletons across Brooklyn. By 1969, Freddie moves out entirely, renting a third-floor walk-up in Flushing with watermarks on the ceilings. He hangs his TWA captain's hat on a nail near the fridge and never touches it. A neighbor named Mrs. Hernandez overhears midnight retching and knocks each morning with a pot of coffee she pretends to have brewed extra. Freddie thanks her, calls her Senora Café, but eventually stops opening the door. Heart damage reveals itself in January 1970. After a lost weekend that ends on the floor of Mulligan's pub, paramedics report his pulse filaments to nothing mid-ambulance, then flicker back. Hospital fluorescent lights feel brighter than runway strobes. Donald visits flanked by 2 real estate deputies. Drop kicks a curt get-well balloon by the bedside, asks the nurse if there's a payphone for urgent business, and leaves. Freddie returns to the Flushing walk-up with prescription beta blockers and a carton of Johnny Walker Red. Divorce finalizes by mail early 1971. Linda receives monthly alimony checks that bounce 3 times in 2 years. She picks up extra shifts on red-eye flights, leaves the kids with her sister, and decides that financial dignity is something you build with calloused knuckles. When Freddie forgets Mary's 7th birthday phone call, Linda doesn't bother reminding him. The kids start referring to Grandpa's house as the Big Cold Castle. Freddie stores their school photos in an old flight chart case, bringing it out when the silence hurts too much. Donald, meanwhile, is collecting press clippings the way kids collect Matchbox cars, Penn Central Hotel deal, Grand Hyatt partnership, Studio 54 party appearances. Interviewers love the origin story nugget about the older brother who couldn't hack it and taught him never to drink. At cocktail parties, Donald loops the anecdote. Fred Jr. had a good heart, but no killer instinct. He knocks back Diet Cokes while his listeners swirl Manhattans. The repetition is a sermon. Weakness is contagious. Avoid it like a poor zip code. The attic that once smelled of cedar trunks now smells like despair sweat. Freddie sometimes walks all night along the Van Wyck Expressway just to feel headlights brush him. He squints at each plane stacking into LaGuardia, guessing model type, altitude, and approach angle. Old muscle memory flexing in subconscious code. Once he scribbles on a napkin, landing is just falling in style. On Christmas Eve 1975, he dials the Trump Organization main line from a payphone by Jack Dempsey's bar. Reception patches him to Donald's secretary, who explains the boss is in Palm Beach finalizing a helipad. Freddie asks if the company will front him $10,000 for an inpatient rehab called High Flight. Yes, that's the real name. The secretary says she'll pass the message along. 2 weeks later, Freddie gets a form letter from corporate HR listing local AA meetings. Typed at the bottom is best wishes for a sober 1976 MGMT. He sells his Chevy Nova for $850 and buys airline vouchers to Cleveland, where an old fraternity buddy promises seasonal work at a parts warehouse. The bus ride from LaGuardia to Port Authority feels like exile. At a midtown light, he looks up and sees a skyscraper skeleton with a Trump sign wrapped in scaffolding. It's lit like a coronation. He steps off the bus, palms a pocket flask until it dents the skin, then steps back on. Cleveland is gray and forgiving. Freddie loads sprockets and steel flanges from 8 to 4, no questions asked. He rents a basement room from a widow who leaves soup on the stair. He attends Tuesday AA, stands when they call for first-timers, sits before he can say his name. He writes letters to Linda but never mails them. He buys Christmas gifts, Matchbox cars, a Barbie pilot outfit, and gives them to a Toys for Tots drive, figuring that's the same as seeing his kids light up. Then on a March morning in 1978, the warehouse manager finds Freddie pale and glassy-eyed, clutching his chest between loading dock pallets. Emergency crews cart him off. The chart reads myocardial infarction, complicated by hepatic distress. He survives barely. Hospital social workers urge long-term rehab. He discharges himself after signing a liability waiver. He thumbs back to Queens via a Greyhound that leaks diesel fumes through cracked floorboards. He moves into a studio near Flushing Meadows where rent is $160 if he fixes the landlord's water heater once a month. Neighbors report hearing Sinatra at all hours and the smell of pipe tobacco drifting through the vents. They also report his generosity. He feeds stray cats. He tips the pizza delivery kid double. He shovels snow for elderly couples. It is as though all the ambition that once pointed upward now pours outward, sideways, in small mercies. He writes the first line of a memoir. I once flew so high gravity got jealous, and never adds a second. Mary turned 16 in 1981. She mails him an invitation to her skating recital. He buys a Greyhound ticket but loses it in a blackout haze. Fred III graduates middle school the same year. Freddie buys him a Swiss Army knife but forgets to mail it. On September 25th, a Saturday night, bar patrons at the Iron Triangle Tavern recall him singing Come Fly With Me off key, tipping the singer $5 because one verse reminded him of Chicago. At 2:15 a.m., he stumbles into his apartment courtyard, fumbles keys and collapses. A neighbor phones 911. Time of death, 3:05 a.m., age 42. Coroner's note: coronary thrombosis exacerbated by chronic alcoholism. Fred Sr. instructs there be no autopsy. No need to dig through ashes, he says. The wake at Marble Collegiate Church is subdued. Organ chords echo across more varnished wood than mourners. Donald breezes in wearing a charcoal overcoat 2 sizes too big, fashion runway shoulders, stands near the casket long enough for a single press photo, then leaves, citing non-stop schedule. Marianne weeps quietly. Elizabeth offers a eulogy about Freddie teaching her to ride a Schwinn. Robert stares at the stained glass windows, half there. Fred Sr. remains stone still, face carved into the shape of a ledger that didn't balance. Linda stays at the back pew with her kids and a pack of tissues that runs out halfway through How Great Thou Art. Burial takes place at Lutheran All Faith Cemetery under a mid-morning flight path. Jet engines roar every 8 minutes, rattling the prayer books. The headstone is simple. Frederick C. Trump Jr., 1938 to 1981. Beloved father. No mention of pilot, son, brother. Linda slips the Swiss Army knife into the dirt because no coffin should go unarmed. Mary whispers that she can almost see her dad's reflection in the belly of the Delta jet overhead. Fred III closes his eyes and counts until the sound fades. Estate lawyers later reveal Freddie left roughly $100,000, mostly life insurance, to his ex-wife and children. The Trump clan's billion-dollar inheritance, settled in 1999, omits them entirely. When Fred III's medical insurance is cut in the heat of a lawsuit, tabloids feast. A headline in the Daily News reads, Trump's stiff their own flesh. Donald tells a radio host, if someone sues me, I'm not their fan. Mary, now studying psychology, vows to write the family map in her own hand someday. Decades roll forward. In 2020, Mary publishes Too Much and Never Enough, painting Freddie as the gentle sacrificial lamb whose failure fed the family mythos of domination. The book sells nearly 1 million copies in a week. Cable panels annotate Freddie's poltergeist in the DNA of modern politics. Viewers tweet crying emojis and airplane icons. Late-night hosts riff on the Trump who flew away. Some call him a cautionary tale. Some call him the only sympathetic Trump.